Welcome back to Take Action News, everybody. David Shuster here. Coming up, we're going to have another debate over Social Security between our own Daniel Marins and an expert also on the left who but believes that there should be certain cuts to Medicare. That's going to be a fun debate. But I want to talk a little bit this particular segment about some news involving members of Congress. New members of Congress were recently advised on both sides about how they should structure their day. How much time should they spend actually dealing with excuse me, with legislation, with meeting with their staff, and how much time they should spend fundraising. And a lot of people outside of Washington were shocked to see in this PowerPoint that members of Congress were advised to carve out at least 5 hours a day, 5 hours a day, either direct fundraising, getting on the phone, asking people for members of Congress, or organizing or talking with staff about fundraising, or coming up with schedules for fundraising. 5 hours a day. And recently, Senator Dick Durbin, Democrat from Illinois, he talked about the insidious impact that this focus on fundraising has on members of Congress. Listen.
If we spend a little more time with folks that aren't as wealthy, I think it's better for us and for the system. So I think that's one of the pluses here. Plus, we have a big agenda here. And I can't tell you, I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I'm sure it's true on both sides of the aisle. If you only knew how much time we spend either raising money or talking about raising money or begging people to take national trips to raise money, it's just nothing short of amazing.
Well, now we know several hours each day. That's what members of Congress are advised to do, and this has an important impact. Never mind whether or not people come up with all sorts of reasons about trying to get money out of politics, and if we just took away the amount of money that members of Congress have to chase, then they wouldn't be so beholden to corporate interests and whatnot. But here's the bottom line. A lot of people think about, well, why is it that Congress is so dysfunctional? How come Democrats, Republicans are unable to reach across the aisle, never mind just on big stuff, but even on smaller things that should not be partisan in their nature? Democrats and Republicans simply won't work together. And why is that? Because the nature of Congress and service in Washington has changed. Once upon a time, in both the Senate and the House, members had time to socialize, to do various social functions with members of the opposite party, and dinners and receptions, and get to know people across the aisle. Now, there's no time for it. Members of Congress have to spend so much of their day fundraising, dialing for dollars, that the opportunity to actually get to know people on the other side as human beings, get to know their family, get to know their spouses, get to know their kids or where they're from, there's no time for that. And so there's no personal relationship that develops. There's no goodwill that develops between them. And everybody is then just sort of cloistered in their own offices fundraising, or cloistered off of Washington, D.C., because you're not allowed to fundraise in a Capitol Hill office. So you have to leave the Capitol and go to these special houses on Capitol Hill where you can dial for dollars. But that's time that could be spent with members of Congress getting to know one another and fostering some goodwill. And Daniel Marins, am I wrong when I say that perhaps, never mind the arguments for publicly financed elections, never mind trying to get the influence of corporations out of politics, but just in terms of a social aspect so that members of Congress can get to know one another better, that seems like a great reason in and of itself to try to get some of the money out of politics.
That's absolutely right, David. And it's impossible to know whether it would do the trick, because obviously I think that one of the biggest issues facing Congress right now is just how right-wing one of the parties is and how unwilling to cooperate they are as a result. But it certainly couldn't hurt. And it reminds me of when Senator Evan Bayh of your home state of Indiana retired a couple of years ago. As he was leaving, he was talking about the specific issue of members of Congress from different parties spending more time with one another. And he wrote a very lengthy op-ed in the New York Times that got a lot of attention, suggesting that to counteract this, there need to be proactive measures, such as sort of dinners, organized dinners with members of both parties and things like that, to artificially reinstitute things that were once natural. And it wasn't a bad idea. The only problem, right after Evan Bayh left office, and he talked about the corrupting influence of money on all of these different dynamics, he became a lobbyist for medical device makers and all sorts of other corporate interests, extremely highly paid, and he's refused to speak to the press about that. And so to me, that kind of represents just how difficult this process is going to be if we're going to dislodge this inertia and change the culture. There is the incentive structure is such that it's very, very difficult to turn down that revolving door, that sweet lucrative job afterwards. And if you want that sweet lucrative job afterwards, You're going to be on the phone all day talking to your funders while you're on the job. And so I think we need structural reform, nothing short of it. And you're right, David. It's an issue of people hanging out together. I do think it's more pressing that they are beholden to these moneyed interests. And as Dick Durbin said, they don't have the perspective of their sort of middle class constituents in mind as much. I deal with, again, obviously, as I always say, though my views here don't represent the views of Social Security Works. During the week, I am a Social Security advocate for the organization Social Security Works, and we speak to members of Congress all the time who could not imagine that it's a big deal for people to work longer later in life, that there are people that work in jobs for whom that's difficult, or that it's a big deal for people to do without, I don't know, $50, $100 a month when they're living on $15,000 a year when they're in retirement or disabled. And that is a function of not encountering those people enough.
Daniel Marins, our executive producer of Take Action News, folks. By the way, if you want to follow Daniel on Twitter, twitter.com/Daniel Marins. Or you can follow me, twitter.com/David Shuster. We are always interested in hearing your perspective, some of the issues that you want to talk about. And folks, by the way, when it comes to, for example, campaign finance reform, there are issues, there's legislation right now that's just sitting there that's languishing in both the Senate and the House. If you want to find them, use the Pop Vox widget on our website. You have to go to takeactionnews.com and go to the little Pop Vox icon on the right. Click on that. It'll give you a listing of all of the bills, all of the legislation that's sitting up there. And you can then use this to let your member of Congress know how you feel about every issue if you want, or one issue at a time, whatever it is. It's a great tool. Coming up, we're going to debate Social Security and a debate essentially from the left between our own Daniel Marins and between somebody who's got a little different point of view about what to do with Social Security benefits and whether they should be cut or not. Great debate coming up when Take Action News continues after this.